Tonight on Nova, the city. It works because of many unseen systems we all take for granted. This is New York City. It uses more power and water and produces more sewage and trash than any other city in the country. How well does it work? And what happens when it doesn't? Join Judd Hirsch to explore the anatomy of the hidden city.
Funding for NOVA is provided by the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. And Lockheed, a bold new force in systems engineering, management, and technology services for defense, space, and industry. Major funding for NOVA is provided by the financial support of viewers like you.
New York City. 7 million people living in the most complex environment ever created by man. Behind the lights is a hidden city. Vast systems that keep it alive. Beneath the streets, there are 80,000 miles of electric cable. And enough water mains to reach China. The Empire State Building would be filled by the trash carted away every month. And then there's the sewage. Well, let's just say there's enough to fill Yankee Stadium 10 times a day. The city depends totally on 4 vital systems: power, water, sewage, and trash. Without them, it would grind to a halt. Coffee grinder and all. My kitchen wouldn't work without the support of a vast urban infrastructure. Beneath the smooth surfaces, wires and pipes are everywhere. Here and there, they pierce the walls. At the other end of this wire are 10 electric generating stations, all owned and operated by Consolidated Edison, New York City's electric utility. It takes energy to make energy. The plant at Astoria burns fossil fuels. Inside an immaculate facility, 6 giant turbine generators turn out electricity 24 hours a day. They're driven by boilers as big as buildings, 8 stories high. Pat Donahue knows these boilers inside out. He started tending them 25 years ago.
You didn't have instruments in the days. You went by how it sounded and you peeked through a porthole, you saw how your fires looked. That's how you operated the boilers. And it was all done by eye and sound. There was no automation, no control rooms.
In today's control room, you look at a television monitor. The plant is operated by remote control. Sensors continually check all the plant systems, but there are limits to the reach of technology.
There's nothing you monitor 100% perfect. I don't think it's ever going to exist, that it can be monitored to that point. Maybe 99, but that's where these people walk around here.
The higher you go, the hotter it gets. With temperatures approaching 130, they say you can cure a cold up here. Con Ed burns more oil and gas than anyone else in New York State. And this is what happens to it. Enormous fires heat the 200 miles of water-filled pipes that line the boiler walls. Steam from the pipes is channeled through the blades of a turbine attached to a generator. Inside the generator, magnets revolve within a housing of coiled wires. Electrons inside the wires are pushed along by the magnetic field and produce a current of electricity. The pipes inside the boiler. Even cold and drained of water, they reveal a hellish existence. Inevitably, they spring a leak from the heat and steam pressure and must be replaced. It's an unglamorous fact, but the hidden city requires no end of maintenance. Years ago, repairs weren't made until there was a breakdown. A boiler takes days to cool, so even then, there was only time for a quick patch in a hot boiler. Today, replacing pipe is a matter of routine.
So it's how you treat them, they treat you. So you really don't run into the problems that you did years and years ago with boilers, thank God.
The boilers used to burn coal, but coal is dirty, so the city forced to change to oil or gas, which are cleaner, but more expensive. Economy is a prime consideration for any investor-owned utility. So on a typical day, only about half of the city's power will come from oil or gas-burning plants. Even oil and gas have their problems. The combustion of fossil fuel releases carbon dioxide, which could contribute to a warming of the Earth's atmosphere. In the mid-50s, Con Ed announced plans to build a new kind of power plant. It would produce clean energy, so cheap that it wouldn't have to be metered. The plant would be located 36 miles north of Times Square at Indian Point.
All we're talking about here is another kind of a firebox in a boiler. The rest of the plant is exactly the same. Turbine, steam generator, and the like.
Yeah, but it's pretty exciting when you realize that this is the atomic age finally come to us, but in a very pleasant and useful form.
Well, that's the thing that makes it romantic, and we're all thrilled about it, too.
25 years later, the romance was over, as the public questioned the safety of the new technology.
Do you want a nuclear plant in your community? No!
But by this time, there were already 2 plants online at Indian Point.
Yeah, we have all of the things around here that you'd expect.
Inside,
All of those.
a nuclear plant looks much like any other power plant,
Now that's the part that this is the generator.
except in the areas where there's nuclear fuel. All the fuel used in the plant since the first day of operation is still here. It's stored in a pool. 25 feet of water acts as a shield. The spent fuel will remain radioactive for centuries. The pool will be filled to capacity by 1994. Nuclear generation supplies New York City with 20% of its power. The cheapest power source of all is water, and hydroelectric can come from as far away as the subarctic. In the vast tundra of northern Quebec, the economies of scale are given full rein. The La Grande hydroelectric complex produces enough power to fill all of Con Ed's needs. On some days, for reasons of economy, more than half the city's electricity is imported. But long transmission lines are vulnerable, so New York must maintain generating capacity at home. Imported power reaches New York through a grid that connects the principal utilities east of the Rockies. The city pools its power with the rest of the state, and every 5 minutes, a computer near Albany monitors production to find the least expensive source. The cheapest is always hydro. Then comes nuclear. Coal, which can be burned outside the city, is a close third. Gas and oil burning plants are usually tapped last. Major lines to the city carry 345,000 volts. Electricity travels with the least loss at high voltages. Transformers at large outdoor substations step it down. Small neighborhood installations reduce it further. At 120 volts, it's just right for a coffee maker. Managing the flow in and around New York City is the job of Consolidated Edison's Energy Control Center, the command post for the production and distribution of nearly 10 million kilowatts of electricity. If there's trouble on New York City's power grid, it'll show up here. The Dunwoody substation, a major transmission hub, has been seriously damaged by fire. Because the grid is interwoven, power can be drawn from other sources. This time, the current continues uninterrupted. The chief systems operator is Dan Staines.
And people will assume that maybe something has to go back in. They should talk to me before anybody makes an assumption. And
the atmosphere is low-key, but the stakes are high. For Danny, the work requires special preparation.
Sort of like a ball player getting ready for the game. And I do live in Jersey, and when I drive in on the Jersey Turnpike, I just have to look out my right window in the car, and I can see New York City. I always think of, well, tonight my job is just to make sure those lights stay on all night long. People would consider it very analogous to an air traffic controller.
Okay, M51, we're showing indeterminate on PERS on, and no flow on just about every single unit.
A lot of routine work, and then there's the few times of stark terror.
I wonder if there's a telephone line cable failure.
The electricity has to be generated on the spot all the time. It's not stored anywhere. It's generated exactly on the spot for the demand that's there.
Predicting just what that demand will be each day is something of an art. The process starts early each morning with a weather report.
3 a.m. Okay. No.
Weather is very important. If it's going to be a very dark day, demand for electricity will be higher because there will be more lights on, and especially in large office buildings. If it's going to be much hotter, then we turn around for every degree, you're going to pick up so many more megawatts of load because, of course, there's going to be more electrical demand.
During the summer, facilities are pushed to their maximum. So if anything goes wrong, there isn't much reserve. On one unforgettable night, July 14, 1977, a lot of things went wrong. The chief systems operator at the time was Charles Durkin.
I remember very clearly my youngest child looking at the sky, maybe about 8:15 or so, and wanting to know what was wrong with the sky. The lightning was so intense.
At 8:37, lightning knocked out 2 feeder cables in Westchester County, north of the city. The disruption caused Indian Point to trip off to automatically cease operation. 18 minutes later, 2 more lines were hit by lightning and tripped. In less than 20 minutes, New York had lost 65% of its ability to import power. At 9:06, Charlie Durkin received a call from the Energy Control Center in Manhattan.
Got some problems, huh?
Yeah, Charlie, just one more. I lost the Y88 and W988, but it must have been struck by lightning because 81 went out. I'm overloaded on 80 by 1,430 megawatts.
Feeder 80 was the only major line left to bring power down from Canada and northern New York State, and it was heavily overloaded. Charlie and the operator on duty worked to increase local production, but the big steam-driven generators were slow to respond. Jet-driven auxiliary turbines couldn't be activated because their operators had gone home for the evening. The decision was made to reduce voltage, to brown out the city. It was an attempt to keep vital outside connections like Feeder 80 from overloading and cutting off.
No, hold it. Yeah, I think we lost 80. Charlie?
81?
80 just opened up.
81 or 80?
They're all out.
With vital connections to the north severed, only 2 major lines connected the city to the rest of the world. The tie to Lilco on Long Island, which was seriously overloaded, and the Linden tie to New Jersey. The Linden tie was now over its emergency rating of 700 megawatts.
What's on the Linden tie?
Oh my God. Linden tie is up to 743.
740.
Well, wait a minute, 906. Yes.
Okay, shed load.
Yeah.
Shedding load, pulling the plug on neighborhoods was the last thing Con Ed could do to preserve the incoming lines. But it was too late. Lilco, afraid of going down with the city, disconnected New York. 5 minutes later, the tie to New Jersey short-circuited. The local plants reeled from the wildly fluctuating load and one by one tripped off. At 9:36, almost an hour after the first lightning struck, the city fell black. Without TV or air conditioning, whoever could make it out went out. Restaurants and bars stayed open. On Broadway, Liv Ullmann played Anna Christie by candlelight and finished to a standing ovation. The darkness seemed to release both the best and the worst in everyone. Hundreds of buildings were set ablaze. At Bellevue, the city's largest hospital, emergency generators failed to come on. Surgery was finished by flashlight. Charlie Durkin made his way to Energy Control through the darkened streets.
I took the responsibility when I came in to lead the restoration process.
The logistics of doing it were immense. I never had realized what we'd have to do to get the system back, to get oil systems running, to get circuit breakers prepared to be restored, to get the proper generation in the proper areas. I don't think any of us ever felt that we would have been tested the way we were tested that day.
Con Ed employees worked around the clock to reactivate a system that wasn't designed to go off. 25 hours after the city fell black, power was fully restored. The Energy Control Center was redesigned after 1977, along with the procedures for running it. Today, when a storm approaches, local electrical production is fired up to replace the power coming in on overhead lines.
Okay, you ready for stop?
Jet-driven turbines can be started by remote control. And when power is lost, a computer goes to work, plotting contingency plans. People who work in this business never say never. But if another major blackout occurs, it probably won't be for the same reasons as the last one. And then, of course, there's water. It may come as a surprise, but unlike most cities, New York's water is untreated except by chlorination. In fact, it regularly wins taste tests against expensive bottled waters. Every day, samples of water selected from over 200 locations throughout the city are brought to the Water Quality Control Lab for evaluation. The most telling test is decidedly low-tech. A superior nose, it turns out, is the best equipment for quality control. Jeanette Best has been sniffing New York's water for 5 years.
My husband tells me that I missed my call and I really should be a detective because I'm always sniffing around. I am able to smell things that other people say that they don't really smell at the time.
From odor and appearance alone, Jeanette is able to identify algae and other pollutants that would go unnoticed by the rest of us. She seldom finds cause for concern. But in the long history of New York, there were times when the drinking water did not smell so sweet. For the Dutch settlers in the 1620s, the harbor location couldn't have been better for trade. But water for drinking was scarce. What fresh groundwater there was became polluted from poor sanitation. Large segments of the population died from waterborne disease. And there were fires. Without an adequate water supply system, the city burned and burned again. At the beginning of the 19th century, Aaron Burr established a water utility which, as it turned out, was primarily a money-making scheme. His Manhattan Company, a predecessor of the Chase Manhattan Bank, built a reservoir on Chambers Street. But the water was no better than before, and there wasn't enough of it. Still, the city grew as none had before. Finally, it was decided that a reliable municipal water system was essential. In 1837, construction began on what would become the greatest engineering achievement of the day. An aqueduct was built across the Harlem River, heading north. It continued both above and below ground for 33 miles. The destination was the Croton River in Westchester County, where pristine waters had been dammed to form a reservoir. Gravity alone moved the water down to the city. Here, it was distributed from a receiving reservoir built on top of Murray Hill, the present-day site of the public library. For the first time, New York City had an abundant supply of clean, fresh water. The celebration lasted for weeks. The Croton system was the first of 3 similar projects, each one bigger than the last. Aqueducts went out next to the Catskills, then to the headwaters of the Delaware River. For a century, there was almost never a time when New York City was not constructing a dam for a reservoir or an aqueduct to tap the water of some upstate New York stream. Managing the scale and duration of the effort would never have been possible had there not been a board of water supply. This was a virtual priesthood of engineers, appointed for life by the mayor. They had power and used it. 27 villages and the farms surrounding them were acquired by eminent domain and submerged. The setup was authoritarian, and it worked. Today, New York drinks from 18 reservoirs spread over a watershed the size of Delaware. The water year begins June 1st. If the reservoirs aren't full by then, it's time to worry about a drought. Water travels down toward the city through a chain of reservoirs and aqueducts. The dam at Kensico, 15 miles north of New York. Most of the water pauses here for a final evaluation. The upstate operation is run by George McKenyon.
The water supply system that the city has created over a century and a half are the city's crown jewels. While they may not be as visible as those stored in the Tower of London, they are nonetheless very valuable, and they're irreplaceable.
The ecology of reservoirs is fragile, so the only motorboats you'll see here belong to watershed police, or in this case, to research scientists. Reservoirs are natural purification plants. They clean water through aeration, exposure to ultraviolet light, and sedimentation. Biological activity further cleanses the waters as larger organisms eat smaller ones. A regular schedule of testing tracks both short and long-term trends in water quality. A black and white Secchi disc is lowered until it is made invisible by the presence of algae and other floating particles. Algae are similar to land grasses. They grow whenever nutrients and light are present. When they die, they flavor the water and use up the oxygen needed to sustain balanced aquatic life. Visibility at a distance greater than 2 meters is acceptable for drinking water. Today's reading?
4.5 meters.
Not bad. A disc has been seen at 40 meters, but that was in Crater Lake, Oregon. A century and a half ago, when the original Croton system was designed, Westchester County was nearly uninhabited. But as the city grew, the watershed for the reservoirs became suburban. Today, fertilizers and animal wastes wash down from lawns and pavement. Sewage treatment plants discharge their effluent into streams. All of these materials flow into the reservoirs, polluting them with toxins and nutrients which feed the algae.
We have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. We have a very high water quality to start with. The thing to do is to preserve that. It doesn't make much sense, both in terms of conscience and in terms of economics, to allow something that starts out as high quality, allow it to degrade, and then go through the effort and the expense of restoring the quality. We have something we would like to pass on to succeeding generations.
Every day, 1.5 billion gallons of water flow from the reservoirs into the underground aqueducts which head down to New York. 90% of the water within the city comes from the Hillview Reservoir, just north of the Bronx. It reaches the boroughs through city tunnels numbers 1 and 2. Between 1910 and 1936, these two giant tunnels were constructed beneath the streets of New York. 600 feet below ground, workers blasted their way through solid bedrock. The finished tunnels were designed to be filled with water 24 hours a day. As a result, they could not then, or to this day, be emptied for maintenance or repair. To do so would leave half the city without water. The cast bronze valves were state-of-the-art for their day. Many are not even touched today for fear the corrosion will cause them to stick permanently. A new third tunnel will allow the older tunnels to be drained for maintenance and will increase water pressure throughout the system. But it won't be completed until sometime early in the next century. The construction involves blasting a tunnel 800 feet underground, 24 feet in diameter, for a distance of 60 miles. All in all, it's the largest non-defense project in the world. Today, blasting has brought the tunnel down to Manhattan from the Bronx, then under the East River to a point here beneath Roosevelt Island. Completion of the project is not guaranteed. It was stopped during the financial crisis of the mid-70s and could fall victim again to more immediate demands. The head frame is kept busy bringing up the groundwater, which inevitably collects, and the men who build the tunnel. They call themselves sand hogs. It's hard work, but the pay is good. $20 an hour.
Well, it's just a decent job for an honest man to make a living for his family. That's if I had the wherewithal, I guess I would have went to law school or medical school. But this is the next best thing, I guess. You know.
A joke here at the Hog House is that the union retirement benefits are so good because no one has lived to collect them.
Yeah, most of the drill runners, about half deaf anyway, even me myself. My hearing is pretty bad. That affects your hearing, your lungs. We got a lot of the rock dust down there. Most of the guys wind up with silicosis, things like that. It's pretty bad. In fact, I'm on my way out now. I'm glad I made it.
City engineers and geologists supervise the work done by contractors. Diane Dennis was the only woman here when she started work back in 1982.
When I first started here, they didn't want to let me in the tunnel because they were afraid I'd get hurt. But after a couple weeks, when they realized that I really didn't start crying when I got mud on me or when I slipped and fell, and they saw that I could walk in 3 miles without complaining that it was dirty, they started accepting me and talking to me. I'm an engineer and a geologist, so I observe what the men are doing and inspect that they do it right.
Of special concern to Diane is the concrete pumped behind these steel forms. It will become the watertight lining of the tunnel, if the job's done right. Once the forms are removed, the concrete must be kept wet for 14 days. This prevents cracks from forming by allowing it to dry slowly.
And we're forever fighting with the contractor because the water hoses wet the concrete, so the men walking under it get wet, and they don't want to be wet. I mean, it's cold down there.
Yeah, the bottom one isn't as necessary as the top one. If you have to shut one off, shut off the bottom.
There is nothing hooked up to the bottom.
Then why is the water coming out?
I agree with them, it's uncomfortable, but it has to be kept wet.
The water is coming out.
And it just...
Right.
I'm yelling at them for the same thing every single day.
Well, it's more important that the top one is hooked up than the middle one. Okay. Because the middle one is like 2 weeks old and the top one is 2 days old.
The tunnel itself has been designed to last hundreds of years. So whenever I tell them that they should do something a little better, they tell me, but it won't break while you're around. No one will know. Maybe it's because I'm still fairly new at it, but I'm self-conscious, and I don't want someone in 50 years to have to fix something I did. I want it to last 200 years.
Water from the city tunnels is forced up riser shafts into a network of trunk mains, 24 to 82 inches in diameter. These move the water from neighborhood to neighborhood. Smaller distribution mains take the water to individual buildings. The director of the Bureau of Water Supply is Joe Conway.
We're like the submarine, the unseen service out there. People just get up every morning and brush their teeth and flush their toilet, and it's always there.
Unless there's a water main break. And there are more than one a day. 3 or 4 times a year, a broken main makes news. Usually, the trouble starts in the early morning. When water use is low, the pressure rises, testing any weakness in the pipe.
First order of business will be to shut down that defective main. When I say shut down the main, it sounds very simple, but really you have to picture those folks walking around knee-deep in water looking for manhole covers that they can pop open and shut a valve.
With Madison Avenue closed, more than 200 buses an hour will have to be rerouted. We're meeting with bus companies, and we hope to get it as smooth as possible, but it'll be tough going no matter what.
They shut every valve that they can get their hands on, never knowing whether the valve that they're operating is indeed the one that's causing this knee-deep condition of water.
It isn't so much age as circumstance that causes the mains to break. All the utilities stacked below New York are continually pounded by vibrations from traffic and subways. As they settle onto each other, the cast iron mains break under the stress. One strategy for preventing breaks is to locate small leaks and repair them before they get worse. By analyzing the sound of a leak, a new computer can pinpoint where to dig. But some underground leaks defy technology. For these situations, a copy of a map drafted in 1865 is kept on hand. The map shows the hills and streams of Manhattan as they appeared to the first settlers. Sometimes escaping water from a broken pipe drains into an old buried stream bed and surfaces blocks away. Virtually all the water that comes into the city goes back out almost instantly through the sewers. 20 feet below street level, wastewater trickles into a 6-inch sewer pipe. It may not go unobserved.
All right, we got a house connection on the left at 46 feet.
The city's 6,200 miles of sewers undergo periodic inspection by a unique television crew.
Whoa, 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 easy. Now pull it from the back, pull it from the back.
No good. I knew you were doing it wrong.
Careful.
It's in.
It's in.
On in fine.
Beautiful.
Bingo. All right, all right. Whoa.
Sewers are made of ceramic pipe like these, or brick or concrete, depending on how old they are. They range in size from 6 inches to 8 feet across. All reports to the contrary, no alligators have been spotted, although there are plenty of Norway rats.
By 83 feet appears to be some grease and dirt. We're going to try and get over it.
Normally, a downhill grade moves the sewage, as well as runoff from the streets, towards one of the 14 sewage treatment plants in the city. During a storm, the amount of rainwater collected from the streets would flood a treatment plant, so the excess runoff mixed with sewage is sent straight into the river. The director of the Bureau of Water Pollution Control is Joe Miller.
If you allowed sewage to run into an ocean or a river, it would clean itself. But the only thing is, there's a certain load that the ocean can take. We follow processes exactly as nature does it itself, except we just do it quicker and more efficient.
The Wards Island sewage treatment plant processes nearly 20% of the 1,700,000,000 gallons of sewage produced daily in the city.
And if you didn't treat the sewage and put it all into the river, you would overload it, the river would lose all of its dissolved oxygen, and it would become a stinking mess.
Treatment begins in the preliminary settling tanks. Gravity does most of the work.
What we take out there is the heavier material, which is the grit and some of the sludge. It settles to the bottom of the tank, and the grease and the scum and oil rise to the top of the tank. We have collecting mechanism that scrapes the tank, both the top and the bottom, and we take this material out in troughs.
Then air is pumped through the water. This stimulates bacteria to feed on suspended and dissolved matter, like tea, alcohol, and urine.
Bacteria is good. Bacteria is actually a plant, and it really eats this material by absorption. It just sort of clusters around the particles, and it absorbs it.
In a final settling tank, these clusters of bacteria fall to the bottom and are removed. The treated water is chlorinated and piped into the adjacent East River. 90% of the impurities have been removed, but the remaining nutrients are still sufficient to cause some concern about their effect on aquatic life. The separated waste material, sludge, requires further processing. First, excess water is removed. Then the sludge is pumped to a digesting tank. Here, bacteria go to work on the remaining organic matter.
Sludge in itself is about 97% water. It's organic material that has not been broken down, and it's also the inert material that you cannot break down.
Across town, raw sewage from half of Manhattan used to go straight into the Hudson River until the North River Treatment Plant came online in 1986. It's the kind of project that keeps engineers working for the city. The plant is bigger than the Pentagon and was built over the river on caissons. An $80 million park will cover the roof. The complex has been nicknamed the Versailles of sewage treatment. But its output will be like all other plants: effluent, which will go into the river, and sludge, which will be dumped at sea.
There's only 3 sinks in nature. You either have the land, the air, and the sea. And we've done extensive studies on all 3. And what our studies have indicated, from a cross-media risk analysis, the ocean is by far the best place to put sludge.
Sludge departs for its watery grave aboard a specially constructed barge docked on the East River. New York City's sludge contains heavy metals and toxins from industry that are not removed by conventional sewage treatment. And while it's illegal to dispose of these materials through the sewers, it happens nonetheless. Sludge is taken to a site 106 miles off the coast, just beyond the continental shelf, and dumped. What long-term effect that may have on the ocean is so far unknown. Congress has banned ocean dumping after 1992. In the near future, New York sludge will most likely be dried, then landfilled or burned. The same techniques now used for disposal of the city's abundant flow of trash. New Yorkers average 6 pounds of trash apiece every day, more than twice the amount of someone in Europe or Japan. So every day, more than 27,000 tons are removed from the city. If anything happens to stop that flow, it becomes a national story.
They're parking it everywhere. They're putting it atop the skyscrapers. It's all because of the 16-day-old New York City garbage strike.
During the financial crisis of the mid-'70s, the sanitation department was forced to lay off 20% of its workforce. New Yorkers complained bitterly as their city got dirtier. The sanitation men took the heat.
The people turn to us and say, you're the criminal because you're not cleaning the city properly. But what about the people who are dirtying it? What penalty do they get for dirtying the city, for dumping on New York? We're not dumping on New York, but we're the lowlife instead of those that are dirtying the city.
If there were a patron saint of sanitation, it would be Merrill Laderman Euclides. Merrill is an artist with a special interest in trash.
You can speak, you talk. I mean, what am I, the only guy around this place?
In 1978, Merrill decided to meet and thank every sanitation worker in New York City and to find out about the job.
People don't want to touch us. People don't want to touch us.
We don't make the garbage, we just pick it up. That's important, you know? People forget that. You see people carrying a bag to the truck like it was contaminated. That comes from your kitchen table.
It took Merrill over a year to meet all of the city's 8,500 sanitation workers.
Hi.
Can I shake your hand?
Sure, why not?
Thank you.
During that time, a new commissioner increased funding.
Thank you for what you're doing for us.
Employees were rehired.
I wish there were 1,000 people.
1 in a million.
Equipment was upgraded. In 1983, the city had an art parade. Normally, the sanitation department would be there to clean up after. But this time, Merrill had a different idea. Maintenance art would go on parade. A mirrored garbage truck led the way. It was an honest reminder of just who was involved in this trash business. For sanitation workers, it was a new day.
I love my job, I tell you. I've had a few jobs in my lifetime, and this is about the best job anyone can ever have.
Today, Aldo D'Ambrosi and his partner John Bonviaggio collect trash in Chinatown.
Chinatown is a tough route. You got to get in and get out of there because about 10 o'clock the tourist bus come in. And then the garment trucks come in. So you gotta move to get out of there.
Sexton.
Well, we know how to collect trash. We know how to sweep streets, and we know how to truck trash around. We use in the city trucks and barges to move it. But I think everyone realizes that we have a problem in disposing trash in America now, and it's a lot easier to pick it up than to put it down.
Trash used to be dumped at sea, but the Supreme Court made that illegal in 1934. Today, the principal repository for the city is the Fresh Kills landfill on Staten Island. By the turn of the century, shipments to Fresh Kills will have to stop. The landfill will be full. Like many cities, New York is running out of space for trash. Fresh Kills is the largest landfill in the world. But even if it were larger, its future would be in question.
Landfilling is cheap, but all landfills leak, and they all bleed gases into the air. And now we are finally coming to grips with the fact that we have to be responsible with what we do with the trash.
The plan is to recycle part of what comes here. Most of the rest would be incinerated. But critics worry that the ash left over by such burning will be so toxic that it will be difficult to landfill. And that an incineration plant in less than perfect working order will pollute the air.
We're going to convince people as best we can that this is a sound way to handle the trash. But many will be unconvinced. We're going to convince people as best we can that it really is important for them to separate their trash so we can recycle if possible, but many will not cooperate. We're going to convince people as best we can that we'll have to go on landfilling some stuff because there's nothing else to do with it, and some people will never appreciate it or agree. But in the end, I know we will do it because the garbage is there. The garbage will win. It's out there. You can't keep it away. No matter how you turn your head, put the pillow over your head, scream and cry, the garbage is coming. Let me put it this way. America and New York will either solve the garbage crisis because we start now investing and planning and building towards an environmentally safe solution, and we'll solve it now in the next few years, or we will solve the garbage crisis 10 years from now in a panic, in hysteria, at 20 times the cost and at 20 times the environmental damage because we waited too long and we did too much harm. But we will solve it somehow.
An interesting thing about these systems, they're invisible and pretty much ignored until they break down. And of course, they do break down, especially when they're ignored. It's a vicious circle, really. But given a little public insight, not inevitably so.
Funding for NOVA is provided by Lockheed, a bold new force in systems engineering, management, and technology services for defense, space, and industry. And the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. Major funding for NOVA is provided by the financial support of viewers like you. For a transcript of this program, send $5 to this address or call 212-227-READ.
This is PBS.